Every king leaves behind a graveyard. For every champion crowned, another is exiled. For every legacy remembered, another is erased. Wrestling's history is not only built on icons, it is built on the dreams that never lived long enough to become reality. A throne is measured not by the stars it creates, but by the bodies buried beneath it. This is that story. Wrestling has always been shaped by men who saw more than a ring. Once a carnival sideshow, scattered across territories, it became an empire in the hands of a single man. Vince McMahon built his kingdom through spectacle and mythology. He didn't sell matches, he forged myths. Hulk Hogan stood as a superhero for television. Stone Cold Steve Austin shattered authority and lit arenas on fire. The Rock became wrestling's first true crossover megastar. John Cena carried the company for more than a decade, his name etched into pop culture. Vince's vision was simple: create titans who stood larger than life. But even empires rot from within. Vince thrived on control and politics. He elevated some while burying others, twisted the system to serve his favorites, and let scandal poison his legacy. By the time his grip slipped, the kingdom itself felt fragile. The man who had built gods was forced to step aside. Into that void stepped Triple H. Once the student of the game, now the kingmaker. He has bled inside the ropes, studied the craft, earned the respect of those who followed. Fans believed he would be different. He promised a future Vince could never envision, and for a time, he delivered. The Bloodline saga unfolded like an epic carved into stone. WrestleMania 40 glowed with grandeur. The women's division, once dismissed as filler, grew into a centerpiece. NXT became a beacon for talent across the world. But power carves its own patterns, and under his reign, those patterns have left scars. For every Roman Reigns and Rhea Ripley, there are names left adrift. Talents with fire in their veins, stripped of momentum, lost in mid-card purgatory, or released. Stars who should have soared, clipped before they could ever take flight. This is their story. Sami Zayn. He is probably not the first man you think of when it comes to those left behind under Triple H. On the surface, his resume is glowing. A WrestleMania main eventer, the man who ended Gunther's historic Intercontinental Championship reign, the current United States champion. On paper, Sami has it all. But wrestling is not measured by paper. It is measured by fire. And once, Sami was pure fire. He was the heartbeat of WWE, the rebel who defied Roman Reigns, the spark that nearly burned the Bloodline empire to the ground. He was the voice of the audience, a man who embodied the struggle against dominance and tyranny. For a brief, glorious moment, he was the most over superstar in the company. His matches carried urgency, his promos cut deep, his connection to the crowd was electric. In Montreal, at Elimination Chamber 2023, the sound of his hometown cheering him against Roman was an earthquake. It was the roar of a people who believed this man belonged at the very top. He stood inches away from history, and in that moment, he looked like the face of WWE's future. And then everything froze. Instead of letting him grow into the hardened main eventer he had earned the right to become, he was pushed back into a mold he had long outgrown. The plucky underdog, the forced smile, the speeches about doing the right thing. The too good to be true act that once made him endearing in NXT, but now feels like a hollow echo. The fire that made him untouchable was drained. What is left today is a version of Sami that feels predictable, insufferable, even forgettable. It is not that he lost matches. Sami can survive defeat. It is that he lost momentum. He lost the edge that made him essential, and that is the greatest tragedy. Sami has already proven he can be more. He thrived as a paranoid heel, railing against conspiracies during the Thunderdome era. He thrived as a rebel babyface, standing against Roman when no one else dared. His range is undeniable. His passion is unmatched, but he has not been allowed to evolve. If he disappeared from television for months, the show would move forward, unchanged. That is the weight of what has been taken from him. And if the hottest act of the Bloodline saga could be cooled to this, imagine what happened to the man once labeled the future, Austin Theory. He was called the future before he earned it. Vince McMahon handpicked him, presented him as the next face of the company, and pushed him into spots far bigger than the crowd was willing to accept. He was gifted the Money in the Bank briefcase, thrown into matches with legends, positioned as though inevitability itself carried his name. At first, under Triple H, there was hope that things might change. The failed cash-in against Seth Rollins breathed new life into him. It stripped away the empty arrogance and replaced it with grit. He spoke with a sharper edge, wrestled with more urgency. For a moment, he looked ready to carve out his own identity instead of carrying one forced onto him. But that spark was short-lived. The reinvention was abandoned. He was shoved back into the role of a cartoonish heel, smiling arrogance, shallow insults, cheap victories. His United States title reign came and went without meaning. Even his match with John Cena, the dream opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with a legend, left him exposed. Instead of walking away elevated, he looked smaller, a reminder that he had been pushed into a role he wasn't ready for. And then he was paired with Grayson Waller, a tag team that stumbled before it ever stood. Fans waited for the turn, for the moment when he would finally break free, when WWE would at last pull the trigger and let him become something more. That moment never came, and now, as he sits sidelined with injury, he looks less like the future and more like another name drifting onto the list of those whose careers withered under Triple H's reign. And if this was the fate of someone gifted every chance before he was ready, then what hope remained for the man crafted as a monster, who won the crowd on his own, carried an aura no machine could fabricate, and still found himself cast aside at the door? Karrion Kross. He was introduced like a nightmare, given flesh. The smoke, the lights, Scarlett's presence beside him. His entrance felt like the summoning of a demon. In NXT, he was unstoppable. Dominant victories, a championship reign that looked inevitable, an aura that screamed final boss. Triple H built him as a figure who didn't just win matches, but bent the brand itself around his presence. On paper, it was perfect. He had the size, he had the look, he had the presentation. He was meant to be inevitable. But inevitability never came. His first main roster run under Vince gutted him of everything that made him special. Scarlett was stripped away, his aura shattered. What once commanded fear became a punchline. The monster turned into a sideshow. And yet, against the odds, he caught fire again. Not because WWE pushed him, but because fans began to see something in him. His presence on the microphone, the way he carried himself backstage like a devil, whispering in the ear of others. He started to feel dangerous again. Audiences began chanting for him, demanding to see him in the ring. For the first time, it felt organic. It felt real. Triple H listened. He booked him against Sami Zayn. It should have been the feud to restore his menace. The rebel against the devil. But the story went nowhere. Sami's heel turn never came. Kross never won a single match. The tension fizzled into nothing. And just like that, the man who got over with the crowd on his own was cast aside again. Unceremoniously, without closure, left drifting in silence. And the man once positioned across from him, he carved his path toward destiny, only to watch it vanish. Not in battle, but in silence. Stolen in the instant when the crown should have been his. Drew McIntyre. He carried the company when no one else could. When the world shut down, when arenas fell silent, and the roar of the crowd was replaced by the hum of generators, Drew McIntyre stood at the front. He slayed Brock Lesnar on the grandest stage, raised the WWE Championship high, and did it with no one there to cheer. He was the face of resilience in an era where nothing felt certain. The champion of empty seats, the warrior of the pandemic. For that sacrifice, he deserved a grand coronation when the world returned. It never came. Clash at the Castle was written in destiny. Drew stood in his homeland, in front of a sea of voices chanting his name, the title within his grasp. It was supposed to be his night, the redemption for all the nights he carried the company alone. But the story ended in heartbreak. The crown snatched away at the final moment. WrestleMania 40 gave him another chance, another climb toward redemption. Once more, he reached. Once more, it slipped. Each loss did more than break momentum. It carved away at a dream. The man who once looked like the savior of WWE has become a warrior wandering without a kingdom. But Drew never stopped fighting. He proved himself again and again, carrying himself like the champion he was denied. On social media, his voice cut sharp, undeniable, making him feel more alive than most of the roster. Inside the ring, he gave fans the feud of the year against CM Punk, a story soaked in venom and fire. Even when handed scraps at WrestleMania, a program with Damian Priest that looked like filler, he spun it into gold. He made everything work. He always has. And yet, he still got nothing. He still fights, still walks with pride, still wears the aura of a champion. But the story that should have defined him has been stripped from him, reduced to whispers of what-ifs and almosts. His path is not one of defeat, but of destiny denied. And while his denial feels cruel, the next woman's story feels colder still, because she helped build the foundation itself, only to watch others reap its rewards. Bayley. She was never supposed to be a footnote. From the very beginning, Bayley was one of the hearts of NXT, the hugger who walked in with innocence, side ponytail, and bright colors, yet somehow pulled the crowd into her world. What could have been dismissed as childish became something more, a living connection between a wrestler and the audience. Her match with Sasha Banks at TakeOver Brooklyn altered the DNA of the entire WWE. It proved women could tell stories with the same depth, emotion, and legacy as the men. When the 4 horsewomen stormed the main roster, Bayley was the one who struggled most to fit the system. Charlotte had the name, Becky had the edge, Sasha had the swagger. Bayley looked like the outcast, but reinvention became her weapon. The cheerful hugger gave way to the role model, a sneering, manipulative heel who carried SmackDown through its darkest era. When the pandemic silenced arenas, Bayley filled that silence. With Sasha at her side, she became the MVP of empty arenas, driving storylines, cutting promos, and giving life to shows that would have otherwise died in the quiet. For months, she was the pulse of WWE. Her injury came at the cruelest moment, months spent on the shelf, her peak stripped away. When she finally returned at SummerSlam 2022, fans believed this was her rebirth, a new stable, a new direction, a chance to reclaim the spotlight. But instead of renewal, came stagnation. Damage control never truly clicked, its purpose muddled, its storylines flat. Bayley, the architect of a division, became secondary to others. Rhea Ripley rose, Bianca Belair rose, Becky Lynch thrived. Even at WrestleMania 40, where she finally stood tall, it felt more like an overdue apology than the crowning she deserved. Bayley should be remembered as one of the great leaders of her generation. Instead, she lingers on the edges, a pioneer left in shadows. Her legacy diminished not by failure, but by neglect. And her story bleeds into another, because while she waits in the dark, the next man has been trapped in a mask under the lights that flicker, never staying on long enough for him to seize them. Chad Gable. Chad Gable is a master of his craft, the technique of an Olympian, the grit of an underdog, the composure of a veteran. His feud with Gunther showed the world what some already knew. Gable is one of the best pure wrestlers alive. Each match was a masterpiece of precision and passion, and the fans saw it. They chanted his name. They willed him toward the moment when he might finally break through. He should have been the one to dethrone Gunther. The story was there. The momentum was his, but Triple H refused to pull the trigger. When he turned heel, he brought that spark back again. This time, his rise felt inevitable. The edge restored, the character sharper than ever. But inevitability never came. The title win never arrived. The payoff was denied. The spotlight shifted, and Gable was pushed back into short segments and comedy filler. Always good enough to deliver, never trusted enough to lead. His brilliance was used but never rewarded. Now he's been masked as Grande Americano, a parody of himself. Somehow he still makes it work, wringing humor and timing from material that should bury anyone else. But a gimmick like that can only go so far. You can't disguise greatness forever. He remains waiting, always proving himself, always ignored. Bayley, the leader, left in shadows. Gable, the technician, left unrewarded. Two stories bound by the same truth. When the crown chooses others, even the worthy are left behind. While who fought with fire are left be forgotten. But what went wrong with Triple H's prodigal son, the one who returned draped in rebellion, carrying destiny in his blood, only to discover that the ending was emptier than the struggle that gave it meaning? Cody Rhodes. He walked away once, tired of being overlooked, tired of being defined by a ceiling he never asked for. He left the machine behind and carved his own path. From the Indies to New Japan, to Ring of Honor, to helping spark AEW into existence, he built himself piece by piece. He crafted his legacy in fire and rebellion, proving he didn't need WWE to become a star. When he returned at WrestleMania 38, it was more than an entrance, it was a resurrection. A man carrying the weight of exile and the pride of survival. His trilogy with Seth Rollins became the stuff of legend. He wrestled through a torn pectoral muscle, his chest bruised black and purple, still putting on a masterpiece that etched itself into history. His pursuit of Roman Reigns became the emotional centerpiece of WWE. The chants followed him everywhere, finish the story. He became the symbol of unfinished business, of legacy waiting to be claimed. And he did. At WrestleMania 40, Cody Rhodes stood tall, ending Roman's historic reign, holding the championship above his head as fireworks lit the sky. On paper, it was perfect. He had conquered the mountain Vince had denied him. He had claimed the throne. He was champion. He was the face on posters. He was the symbol of WWE's new era. But a throne without fire is just a chair. His reign has not felt like victory. The challengers have been weak, the stories unfocused, the aura diminished. Instead of rebellion, Cody now feels like a corporate emblem. Instead of fire, he radiates polish. The passion that once defined him has been traded for hollow smiles and scripted speeches. He is respected, but not believed in. He is the king, but not the heart of his own kingdom. And this is the cruelest twist of all. He got everything he asked for, everything he fought for, everything he bled for, and somehow it still feels like nothing. The story was finished, but the ending reads like an epilogue no one wanted. Triple H was handed the book with promises of salvation. He gave us masterpieces but also left behind ghosts, the fan favorite trapped in place, the young prospect overexposed, the monster unprotected, the warrior denied his destiny, the pioneer brushed aside, the technician unrewarded, the redeemer polished into emptiness. Triple H may love wrestling, but his reign has clipped the wings of too many who should have soared. Every empire leaves behind a graveyard, and this is the graveyard of Triple H's rule. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you want a part 2, drop a comment and let me know who else belongs on this list. Click on the screen right now to find out what truly is the greatest rivalry of this era. Don't forget to subscribe.